Good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Gorodnick, Chair of the City Planning Commission, Director of the Department of City Planning. Welcome to today's public meeting of August 9th, 2023. We are going to start today with several votes on items that are from around the city and then move to a few public hearings that we have lined up for today's agenda. The votes will be on 3 landmarkings for historic sites located in the Bronx. These items received approval from the Landmarks Preservation Commission and are now before us for review before going to the City Council. First is the Fire Alarm Telegraph Bureau Bronx Central Office, built between 1913 and 1915 and located along East 80th Street near the Bronx Zoo. Next is the Bronx Opera House in Mott Haven, which opened in 1913 and went through several iterations over the years, from a theater hall for plays and vaudeville, to a movie house, to a Latin music dance club, and finally to its current use as a boutique hotel. The third landmarking is for Firehouse Engine Company 88, Ladder Company 38 in Belmont. It was built in 1907, 1908, and still serves as a fire station today. We'll then move to Boerum Hill, Brooklyn for a vote on 280 Bergen Street, which this Commission and City Council approved last year. It's back before us to waive all of its required parking. The development will include 300 new homes, 80 of them income restricted. Next up, a vote on 4218 31st Avenue in Astoria, Queens. This proposed residential development would contain over 30 homes, around 12 of them income restricted, ground floor retail, and 25 bike parking spaces. The site is close to the Steinway Street commercial corridor and the M&R trains. Moving to Staten Island, the Commission will vote today on the Department of City Planning's South Richmond zoning relief proposal, which aims to ease zoning burdens on homeowners, enhance preservation of natural features, and give the community greater say on sensitive areas in the special South Richmond Development District. I'll have more to say on this item when it comes up for a vote. Staying on Staten Island, we'll vote on 125 Greaves Lane in Great Kills. This site is looking to extend a commercial overlay over a residential district, so an existing building can convert from a community facility to a commercial use. And our last vote for today is on a zoning lot subdivision at 50 Knessel Street in Rossville. Moving to today's public hearings, we are starting with the Tompkinsville Esplanade and Department of Transportation Pier for the neighborhood of Tompkinsville on the North Shore of Staten Island. This $230 million investment would create open space along the shoreline for New Yorkers and is a key commitment from the Department of City Planning's Bay Street Corridor Plan, which was approved in 2019. This is an example of the city making and keeping its promises. Our next hearing is regarding the 180 Skirmerhorn Street parking lot, which is looking to increase its capacity from 150 to 245 spaces. This site is located on the edge of the downtown Brooklyn Central Business District. Staying in Brooklyn, the public is welcome to testify on a proposed building located at 703 Myrtle Avenue in Bed-Stuy. That would include over 50 homes, nearly 20 of them income restricted, and ground floor retail with over 30 bike parking spots near Marcy Playground and the Myrtle Willoughby Avenue G train stop. We'll move from Bed-Stuy to Brownsville for our next hearing, another housing development that will include 200 income-restricted homes throughout 2 buildings. 50 of them would be permanently income-restricted through MIH, Mandatory Inclusionary Housing, located at 39 Belmont Avenue and 129 Osborne Street. The 2 sites are within walking distance of the Sutter Avenue L train stop and close to several parks or playgrounds. So that's the agenda. We're ready to go. Madam Secretary, let's take it away.
Good morning. This is the City Planning Commission public meeting held remotely through the NYC Engage portal and in person in the CPC Hearing Room 120 Broadway, Lower Concourse. Today is Wednesday, August 9, 2023. I will now call the roll. Chair Gorodnick.
Here.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Here.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Present.
Commissioner Bozark.
Here.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Here.
Commissioner Crowell.
Present.
Commissioner Dewitt.
Here.
Commissioner Gold.
Here.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Here.
Commissioner Kermani.
Here.
Commissioner Marin is on Zoom.
I am here. Sorry about that. Difficulties. I am here.
Commissioner Osorio.
Here.
Commissioner Ramprashad is on Zoom.
Here.
A quorum is present. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the public meeting of Wednesday, July 26, 2023.
Great. I make a motion to approve the minutes of Wednesday, July 26th. Is there a second?
Second.
The Vice Chairman has seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Minutes are approved.
Scheduling calendar numbers 1 and 2, we have resolutions for adoption scheduling Wednesday, August 23rd, 2023 for a public hearing to be held in person in the CPC Hearing Room 120 Broadway and remotely through the NYC Engage portal.
Great. I make a motion to approve the resolutions. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Benjamin. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. Resolution is adopted.
The next part of the calendar is the report section on page 5. Borough of the Bronx, calendar number 3, Fire Alarm Telegraph Bureau, Bronx Central Office, N230383HIX. And the matter of a communication from the Landmarks Preservation Commission regarding a landmark designation concerning the Fire Alarm Telegraph Bureau, Bronx Central Office, for the adoption of calendar number 3 for referral to the City Council. Chair Rodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Bozark.
Yes.
Commissioner Srulo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dueck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Yes.
Commissioner Kermani.
Yes.
Commissioner Mudden.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar number 3 has been adopted. Borough of the Bronx, calendar number 4, Bronx Opera House, CD1, N230385HIX, in the matter of a communication from the Landmarks Preservation Commission regarding a landmark designation concerning the Bronx Opera House, for adoption of calendar number 4 for referral to the City Council. Chair Rodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Bozark.
Yes.
Commissioner Srulo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dueck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Yes.
Commissioner Kermani.
Yes.
Commissioner Mudden.
Very happy to vote yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar number 4 has been adopted. Borough of the Bronx, calendar number 5, Firehouse Engine Company 88, Ladder Company 38, CD6, N230386HIX, in the matter of a communication from the Landmarks Preservation Commission regarding a landmark designation concerning the Firehouse Engine Company 88, Ladder Company 38, for the adoption of calendar number 5 for referral to the City Council. Chair Rodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Bozark.
Yes.
Commissioner Srulo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dueck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Yes.
Commissioner Kermani.
Yes.
Commissioner Mudden.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar number 5 has been adopted. Borough of Brooklyn, calendar number 6, 280 Bergen Street, parking special permit, CD2, C230162ZSK, and the matter of an application for a special permit concerning 280 Bergen Street parking special permit. For favorable report on calendar number 6, Chair Rodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Bozark.
Yes.
Commissioner Srulo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dueck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Yes.
Commissioner Kermani.
Yes.
Commissioner Mudden.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes, and I so much would like to thank the department for these reports. This one and the previous one were excellent.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 6. Borough of Queens, calendar numbers 7 and 8, 4218 31st Avenue rezoning, CD1, calendar number 7, C230012ZMQ, calendar number 8, N230013ZRQ, and the matter of applications for a zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 4218 31st Avenue rezoning. For favorable reports on calendar numbers 7 and 8, Chair Rodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Bozark.
Yes.
Commissioner Srulo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dueck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Abstain.
Commissioner Kermani.
Yes.
Commissioner Mudden.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Recused.
Recused. Favorable reports have been adopted on calendar numbers 7 and 8. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 9, South Richmond zoning relief, CD3, N230112ZRR in the matter of an application for a zoning text amendment concerning South Richmond zoning relief. For favorable report on calendar number 9, Chair Gorodnick.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Before I vote, I just want to note, since this is a proposal coming out of the Department of City Planning, that we're really excited about this proposal. Today's rules in the special South Richmond Development District in Staten Island simply do not work anymore for the neighborhood. They were put in place 50 years ago and have not kept up with the times. Instead of protecting the natural districts while allowing reasonable development, they are forcing homeowners to navigate a Byzantine labyrinth of expensive, time-consuming regulations to install a pool or remove a tree on their property, for example. But larger sites with sensitive features, sensitive natural features, those that warrant such thorough regulations, don't always get the same scrutiny. This imbalance needs correcting, and that's what this plan will do. The Department of City Planning worked for years with the Staten Island community to get the balance right here, and I believe that we have succeeded. The favorable recommendations from Staten Island Community Board 3 and Borough President Vito Fossella, as well as the support from Council Member Joe Borelli for this plan, shows that the community feels the same way, and we are very happy for their support. Mayor Adams counts cutting red tape and improving the way city government works among his key policy goals for this administration. With these proposed changes, we are improving the zoning tools available to us to make life easier for small homeowners while also achieving important environmental and sustainability goals. City planning can walk and chew gum at the same time, and we can protect our natural districts while also letting homeowners make small changes to their property at the same time as well. I vote aye. Thank you.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Bozark.
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Mr. Chairman, in casting my vote, I just want to acknowledge the work that has gone into this, an example of how working together with the community can achieve great things. To everyone in the department's Staten Island office, I thank you, and to the elected officials, the community board, and the residents of the South Shore of Staten Island, including the private sector experts that volunteered their time during this process. I thank them as well. Making life easier and less costly for homeowners to do simple changes to their property while we retain discretionary oversight and approval on larger sites is both rational and smart. And I am very happy, as I am sure you will all be too, that many of the items that have come our way for decades will skip this time-consuming process once approved by the council. I do want to also acknowledge the vesting request that was made to us by a developer during public review. While it seemed to me to be a reasonable request, I have learned through follow-up review that based on the fact that the department's typical standard for vested status is certification or referral by the CPC prior to certification or referral of the parallel text amendment, neither of these things have occurred. Additionally, since the department and other city agencies continue to review that application and its associated environmental review, the department is also certain that the applicant cannot complete this work before our action today, obviously, or the city council votes on the text amendment for this relief, and therefore their request could not be granted at this time. I thank the staff for their evaluation of this request and appreciate that the rationale for rejecting it is outlined in our report. With that said, I vote aye.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dewick.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Happy to vote yes on the City of Yes proposal.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Yes.
Commissioner Kermani.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 9. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 10, 125 Greaves Lane, CD3, C220456ZMR, and the matter of an application for a zoning map amendment concerning 125 Greaves Lane. For favorable report on calendar number 10, Chair Gorodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin,
Aye.
Commissioner Bozark,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell,
Yes.
Commissioner Dueck,
Yes.
Commissioner Gold,
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich,
Yes.
Commissioner Kermani,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
I think you're muted, Commissioner.
We can come back. Commissioner Osorio,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Commissioner Marin, can you hear us? He may be frozen. Okay.
you can rejoin and
Yep.
then we'll collect the vote on that. If your rule report has been adopted on calendar number 10. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 11, 52 Nestle Street, Lot 30, CD3, and 230-283 RCR. And the matter of an application for the grant of certification concerning 52 Nestle Street, Lot 30. For the adoption of calendar number 11, Chair Gorodnick,
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin,
Aye.
Commissioner Bozark,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell,
Yes.
Commissioner Dueck,
Yes.
Commissioner Gold,
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich,
Yes.
Commissioner Kermani,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes, and I believe I missed the last vote, unfortunately due to technology, and I'd like to vote yes, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Osorio,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar number 11 has been adopted. The next part of the calendar is the public hearing section on page 9.
Great. Thank you very much. We ask those who are testifying today to limit their remarks to 3 minutes. We're going to get right into it. Madam Secretary, let's call the first items on the agenda for today.
Borough of Staten Island, calendar numbers 12, 13, and 14. Tompkinsville, Esplanade, and DOT Pier. CD1, calendar number 12, C230, 230-217 PSR. Calendar number 13, C230-218 PSR. Calendar number 14, C230-033 MMR. Public hearing, the matter of the application for site selection and a city map amendment concerning Tompkinsville's Esplanade and DOT Pier.
Great. Thank you very much. I am going to note we have a number of representatives from city agencies present. I'm just going to name who is here, and then I'm going to turn it over to you. We have Barry Torrey, Brooke Wiskorek, Andrew Abend, Shadnam Bista, Judah Abend, Monroe Johnson, Jessica Tang, and Diana Switage. And forgive me if I did harm to any of your names. The floor is now yours. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Brooke Wiskorek. I'm a Vice President at the New York City Economic Development Corporation, here today to present the Tompkinsville Esplanade and Pier project. EDC is the applicant rep and managing the design and construction contracts for this capital project. The proposed project is a half-mile pedestrian and bicycle pathway connecting New Stapleton to Lighthouse Point and the St. George Ferry Terminal. This is the final segment of a 2-mile-long esplanade and includes complex sections through a working waterfront at Miller's Launch and through a public easement area at Bay Street Landing. The project would stabilize the shoreline, include sea level rise and storm surge protection, and create new public amenities. The project requires the Commission's approval of 2 types of actions. The first is formally mapping streets and parkland on the city map. The second is site selection of a new public facility and open space. So EDC is here today with applicant agencies from New York City DOT and the Parks Department. Before diving into specific actions, we wanted to provide more context on the existing conditions. First is the area of the future DOT Dock Builders Pier. Here there are existing piles and fenderings along the waterfront, debris, dilapidated shoreline, failing bulkhead, and no sidewalk. Next is the Victory Point area. At the top and right, you can see the fenced-off area is overgrown with vegetation. The bottom left photo shows the collapsed relieving platform and bulkhead at Bay Street Landing, just north of Victory Point. Now for the specifics of the actions, starting with mapping. The purpose of the mapping action is to establish 2 existing streets, Victory Boulevard and Cromwell Promenade, formally on the city map. DOT will then be assigned jurisdiction and maintenance upon mapping approval. The application also requests to map parkland on the parking lot of Lions Pool, which is today zoned R32. The Parks Department is redeveloping a rec center here with anticipated opening in 2025. Next, for site selection, there are 2 requested actions. First is the site selection of a new pier facility for DOT Dock Builders operation, shown here over the water in yellow. This would rehome their facility from a waterfront lot in Stapleton, shown where the dash line is further south. The Dock Builders operation provides routine inspections and critical maintenance to the St. George and Whitehall ferry terminals and associated vessels of the Staten Island ferry system. Activities on the pier will include open-air storage and transloading of lumber onto vessels to shuttle them around the harbor. The new pier facility would allow DOT operations to be conducted more efficiently, as their existing site has limited shoreline frontage. Moving from land to the pier reduces their overall footprint along the waterfront, but allows even more efficient use of space with up to 10 barge tie-up areas. The pier would be a secure DOT facility and not open to the public. On the top left is a rendering of the proposed pier building, and that building footprint is shown in orange at the bottom of the plan. The second site selection action is new open space, which will be maintained by the Parks Department. This area will be a net new open space with a riprap revetment along the perimeter.
I'd like to hear the rest of this, so can you just...
Thank you. Here's a rendering showing the revetment, which also serves as storm surge protection against wave action with passive open space atop the structure. Another rendering showing the proposed relieving platform at Bay Street Landing, just north of Victory Point, and a last image from the vantage point of the new Cromwell Promenade area of the Esplanade. This concludes our presentation and our request for the Commission's approval of the required actions. Thank you, and we look forward to your questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Let me just start with just noting the significance of this for the waterfront of Staten Island, this particular part of Staten Island. This will be a very significant change and one which is long overdue. Tell us a little bit about the time frame of what you expect for the work, assuming approval. What will be the next steps for each of the component parts of this project?
Sure. So construction, thank you for the question. Construction is anticipated to start at the beginning of next year, and it would end late 2026. The way that we've been thinking about staging construction and sequencing is first you have to stabilize the shoreline to do any topside improvements. Then we would proceed with DOT Dock Builders Pier, and at the same time focus on Bay Street Landing, and then finish the Esplanade and Victory Point.
Okay, so starts next year, finishes 2026 is
That's correct.
Approximate. Okay, and the pier itself, the DOT Dock Builders Pier, can you just give us a little bit, paint a picture for us as to what after 2026 the operations of that pier look like?
Sure.
Who's using it? Who's maintaining it? Who's out there on a daily or weekly basis? How would that work?
Thank you. Yeah, I've prepared a response, but we also have Assistant Commissioner Barry Torrey here who can jump in and supplement whatever I provide. So the DOT pier site is city-owned property for lands underwater. The pier site is approximately 1.6-acre portion of a larger Lot 100. This is the location of the waterfront just south of the Pier 7 pile field. That area was demolished in 1991. This is also just south of Miller's Launch, which is an existing working waterfront site. The site is zoned M21. Based on FEMA flood maps, we're within the V zone. There's a high risk of flooding that can damage the shoreline, so we're raising the pier and the shoreline out of the flood zone and accounting for a sea level rise to a 2080 design flood elevation. The existing condition of the shoreline there, it's a mix of unengineered and poor condition riprap and bulkhead. There's debris and trash. The area is inaccessible today. So the proposed pier would be a replacement facility of existing open lot in the area south at Stapleton. So rehoming dock builders from that that area to the south to 1,000 feet north to this pier. And this is a strategic site that would enable dock builders to conduct operations more effectively. Dock builders, they operate and maintain a 9-vessel fleet, as well as the St. George Ferry Terminal in Staten Island, Whitehall Ferry Terminal in Manhattan, City Island and Hart Island facilities, the Battery Maritime Building, and all floating dock building equipment. They are specifically responsible for maintaining the wood fendering system for the Staten Island Ferry. Other city-owned docks that DOT dock builders may have to repair include Pier 11, East 34th Street, Pier 79, Yankee Stadium Landing. DOT dock builders can be called upon to provide support for bridges operated, owned, and maintained by DOT. They've been located at the Homeport Pier, or just north of the Homeport Pier, south of this site in New Stapleton since the 80s, And although that existing location is relatively near the St. George terminal, it has been suboptimal operationally because it lacks adequate mooring facilities and has extremely limited direct water access, about only 250 feet today. This new pier would provide over 1,400 feet of waterfront access around the perimeter of the edge of the pier, which reduces the DOT overall footprint by 40% when moving from the lot to the pier. The DOT operations on the pier, among other responsibilities, include the receipt and placement of timber piles and fenders, and Greenheart lumber and other general maintenance lumber related to typical construction equipment, using typical construction equipment, including heavy-duty forklifts, cranes, etc. So this is really the landing point and the throughput of lumber to support DOT dock builders operations citywide. The proposed pier would serve as the home port for that lumber. Typically, daily operations at the pier would involve preparing and transloading or moving piles and fenders to the pier via crane to barge to bring materials to other sites citywide. The activities on the pier mainly include woodworking with limited heavy, noxious uses. The proposed building on the pier will be about 40 feet tall because it must be raised out of the floodplain. The shape of the building is 30 by 90. It's about 6,300 gross square feet. The material on the pier will be stored on the north side of the pier as well as the south side to transload to the barge and moors. The proposed pier would be separated from the planned Tompkinsville Esplanade by a gate that would remain closed and would open only to provide access to the pier for deliveries or tractor activity. At the southern and eastern face of the pier, a fender system would be constructed to withstand berthing forces of the docking vessels to pick up the lumber deliveries. The fender system would mainly consist of timber fender piles, timber shocks, and timber whales. We hope that clarifies the pier purpose, and again, happy to invite Assistant Commissioner up to answer any questions.
I mean, that's certainly plenty of information. I appreciate that. And just, and maybe a very basic question, but based on what you just said, it sounds like the timber piles, lumber is coming in, there's work happening on the pier, and then it's going back out by boat.
That's right. So if you consider it as a throughput to other DOT facilities, but Assistant Commissioner Torrey and I were talking this morning, it's also the landing place for damaged material that needs to come from the ferry terminals back to DOT to chop it up and reuse that. So
really what I'm asking is, are there circumstances in which materials are either brought to the pier by truck or removed from the pier by truck and sent elsewhere in the city, or is it all a water-to-water based transport system when dealing with these materials?
It will be truck to water. So this is the point that the 70-foot timber piles come off the truck. There's going to be 3 to 4 deliveries a week. And at that point, there would be a DOT flag person making sure there's no conflict with Esplanade users.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cerullo and then Commissioner Sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I have to say that's the first time I think we've heard that the dock's purpose also involves trucking materials through what is expected based on the Bay Street corridor rezoning to be a completely residential neighborhood. And I just wonder what the plans will be to not only for this Esplanade project, which is all about public access, but and perhaps there are certain days of the week this may not be happening on a weekend where it might be used, the promenade might be used more than other days, but I have to say that it's definitely a concern in terms of planning and understanding what the city could be doing to minimize the impacts of 70-foot lumber deliveries 3 or 4 times a week coming using, I'm assuming, Front Street, but I'm also assuming that it's coming, where else could it be coming from, Bay Street to Front Street, which, again, is going to be really a corridor for residential and other uses, of course, but primarily residential. Mm-hmm. So I just say that because it was a question about the waterborne access, and I don't think at any point in this process did we learn that this pier would also be servicing truck loading and unloading, and then traffic through the North Shore streets. So I just note that. I don't know if, I don't know how to, I don't want to interrupt.
Thank you. I'll first just make 2 points before I hand it over to Assistant Commissioner Torrey. So, as you know, as part of the 2019 Bay Street rezoning, there was a points of agreement, which promised, the city had promised and DOT had promised to vacate this new Stapleton site that DOT operates from today. So by moving from that new Stapleton site to this pier, they have an overall net reduction of the footprint along this very heavily used waterfront, about 40%. So we're consolidating activities. It is necessary to keep it in this location in proximity to the Staten Island Ferry, St. George Terminal, Whitehall Terminal, because of proximity of the deliveries and how Dock Builders works. So that's part one of just overall net reduction and consolidation to unlock the rest of Stapleton and Tompkinsville Esplanade. And the second point, I think, is more of a design consideration that we've taken very seriously. We've worked both with DOT Dock Builders and Miller's Launch about how to create safe crossings through design measures. So, for example, the striping, the fencing, the rolling gate that's going to be at the edge of DOT Dock Builders, along with DOT personnel that's going to be there at the time of truck deliveries and people coming into the site, is meant to ensure that there's no conflicts with pedestrian or bikes. There's going to be tactile kind of strips, signage, markings, a really clear delineation to users of when they're in a potential conflict zone. So with that, I'll pass it to Barry Torrey.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. I just want to clarify that the 2 to 3 days a week would not be 70-foot deliveries of lumber coming in for piles. Okay. Those deliveries come in like 1 to 2 times a year, those large piles. When we can, they come straight from a barge, and we'll transload them right onto the pier, so it wouldn't come to the road. The 2 to 3 deliveries a week is based upon like dumpsters, in deliveries of smaller materials.
Okay, I appreciate that. I guess I think what would be helpful for us to be looking at as after the public hearing is also obviously to the north. It looks like there's some design element that obviously does not include development. It's more natural area in the road. But I'm not exactly sure what's happening immediately to the south and whether that's a potential development site. Also, what I would say would be to the west, I guess, across the street, we'll say, from this entrance way, if that's a development site as well. We should be aware of what's possible or what we had envisioned to happen along Front Street here. Again, that's a separate issue, but I think it's just something to consider. I mean, understand that this project is, as you know, completely embraced by the community and long awaited. So if we can just be ahead of the potential where there are conflicts, that we do our best to minimize what they may be. While I have you both up here, one other question I had raised during certification is the design, and I know EDC said you're involved in the design of this, and I'm not sure if that includes the design of the DOT building, the structure that will be at the pier, but we've seen a rendering of it, or at least I'm not sure if that's realistic or it's just sort of a placeholder for a design, but can you describe what is that what it's going to look like? What do we think it's going to look like? And how will it relate to the fact that this is expected to become a residential community, which might be right across the street, never mind to the south of it, or at least across the way, even if it isn't directly across the street? Thank you for the clarification. So this DOT Dock Builders building is subject to PDC review. I think this is the point that we went through conceptual review. We're not yet through final review. Barry, Assistant Commissioner Torrey, can speak to the uses in the building. But I would say that there's a lot of push factors that inform the envelope of the building. We have designed the building so that it has the minimum footprint possible, and that's because we're subject to state and federal regulations for building in the V zone and building over the water. So we're working with Army Corps and DEC to permit that building.
The first floor of that building must be raised to plus 17 feet. So I think there's going to be garage doors that come down there, but they're meant to be breakaway and floodable. This portion of the pier is meant to be floodable because it's a little bit lower and it needs to tie into the esplanade there. I think with the Public Design Commission's feedback, they have been thinking about what is the pedestrian experience from the esplanade when they're going through this building or next to this building. So we've been taking their design feedback on materiality. Another influence on the building is under local law, we have to have the solar panels on the roof. So there's a lot of push factors informing this. But again, to the maximum extent, we've tried to make this the smallest building possible that works for DOT operations. Anything you want to add on operations?
I think you hit on the head. Let's just further.
Okay, no. I mean, I appreciate that. I hope that however this plays out in design, that it does recognize the fact that people will be experiencing this building going in two different directions, never mind perhaps three, not from the water, of course, but from the 3 points on the land side, and that it also will have residential development all around it. So at some point it needs to not stick out like a sore thumb, and yet I know function, because it's not clear on this what it's going to look like. And then the last question I have at the moment is about those who are working either at this building or at the pier, on the pier. If and I'm assuming some of them will come by boat from another location if that's where their starting point is. But what is the parking? What I'm assuming, this is Staten Island, people will drive to work, especially if they're coming from another borough, perhaps, and they're not getting on a boat in their borough. What is the expectation for parking here? Will people be parking in that same enclosed area that you're using for the storage, or are people just going to be parking out on the street who are coming to work here?
I'll start, and then again, feel free to jump in. So the building is really to shelter crane and sensitive equipment. It's not meant to be a garage by any means.
Got it.
Because it's a DOT secure facility, there will be parking beyond the gate on the pier. But again, because that space, the pier has been designed to be so minimized, and most of that area is going to be for storage of materials, there will be very few parking spaces. We could get back to you on specifics of parking number, but it will be all internal to the site.
It will be all internal. Yeah, just to have an idea of what the expectation is in terms of the number of vehicles who may be coming to work, and then how many parking spots are actually available for those people would be helpful.
Yeah, just to clarify, the dock builders, they start their day in St. George, so generally it would be a van. They would come, those assigned to that dock would come by one van, so we have one DOT van on site. The rest, as you alluded to, do come by vessel. Okay. So we're not looking to put them in the street. It's minimal spots. We can get back with the exact number, but it's like 2 to 4 as I recall, on the pier.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Osorio, Gold, Benjamin.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much for the presentation, and thanks so much for the clarity of the materials that we received. It's clear that there's a strong effort to be consistent with local community priorities and previous plans, especially to advance maritime. I have 2 quick questions, both of them related to the way in which you framed your response to fair share. The first one has to do with what's going to happen with the current side. My understanding is that the existing location is planned to be redeveloped with affordable housing and a school. I'm wondering if, and I know that we're looking today at the proposed relocation, but I'm wondering if you can share with us a little bit what are the thresholds, the affordability thresholds, any details that you have in terms of the proposed affordable housing that is going to be redeveloped in the current site. That's the first question.
Sure. So I, by nature of working at EDC, am familiar with the new Stapleton project, and that site, like you said, is slated for affordable housing. So DOT's relocation to the new pier is a critical path item for any affordable housing to be unlocked there. EDC is working in partnership with HPD on redeveloping all of New Stapleton waterfront as it relates to the original, I think it was 2008 approvals, but there's no set plans at this point to RFP it, and I would defer to HPD on timing and affordability levels.
But just to be clear, so our decision here or the review here is not contingent upon the plan for that other side, or is it?
They are inherently tied, that there's a timing consideration that DOT dock builders must move for HPD to move forward with any housing. But the site selection and the way we talked about the fair share criteria is really about DOT operations.
Understood. Thank you. The second question has to do with the projected jobs. So building on Commissioner Cirillo's question, I want to know how many of these jobs will actually be locally, at least recruited? Like, what is the plan right now in terms of which types of jobs are we talking about, and who's going to actually be recruited for them?
Is that specific to DOT operations or for construction of the project?
For the operations of the pier and the open space and so forth. Yeah.
So I'll start, and again, Assistant Commissioner Torrey can jump in. But part of the rationale for building DOT dock builders, giving them a brand new facility, is that Staten Island ferry ridership has really exploded since the year 2000. New York City has bought new fleets of the Staten Island ferry, and with the support of OMB, DOT dock builders and DOT staff has been working on ramping up to meet that demand. The activities on the pier, I think, we've talked about it, between 8 and 12 employees, and Assistant Commissioner Torrey can correct me, but it's a very highly specialized and skilled set of workers that are trained in woodworking. So I'll pass it to Torrey.
Now, once again, she hit it right on the head, so it's easy to answer or add to. The dock builders are they're DOT employees currently. That title spec does require New York City residency, so that there's specialized trade that we basically have that employee set already in-house. This pier would not necessarily add to that group.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gold.
Thank you. Two quick questions, and actually, it looks to be really an amazing use of an underappreciated asset, particularly to the promenade. First, the promenade, so when we say we'll be finished 2026, does that mean the promenade opens to the public 2026? Is that the expectation?
Yes.
Okay, easy. And then second, this is, as I think earlier noted, a good opportunity to help make the broader area more resilient there. I actually officed not too far from there during Hurricane Sandy, so I remember distinctly how much water the area took, and the office was closed the building was One Edgewater Plaza was closed for a couple of weeks. Can you just speak a little bit about some of the efforts there to help out with the resilience and to prevent something similar happening, given that this is such a great opportunity to do it?
Sure. Thank you for the question, and that's been top of mind for the design team as well. So not only was this a city commitment that came out of the 2019 Bay Street POA, but there was also a FEMA grant, or there is a FEMA grant committed to this project. It's a hazard mitigation program grant. So the tenets of that grant are really to harden the shoreline and prevent against storm damage in particular. So through that FEMA grant, we are protecting against storm surge in particular and the wave action at Victory Peninsula. So the revetment choice, that engineering choice, helps with wave action, and also the condition of the bulkhead and shoreline today is so dilapidated that there could be a risk that these streets actually wash away. So stabilizing the shoreline first in of itself is the resiliency goal, but through the city capital funds, through the city project, we're also raising the shoreline above a 2080 sea level rise projection. So that's about plus 24 inches across the entirety of the Esplanade.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Benjamin, Commissioner Goodridge, and Commissioner Rampersad.
Yeah, I may have missed it, but one of the items you're talking about is that DEP is rebuilding an outfall. Is this an area that has combined sewers?
Yes, that's right.
And is this outfall used for the combined sewers, or is this an outfall from the waste treatment facility?
This is a CSO outfall that is rebuilt because we are improving Victory Point, where the CSO outfall comes today. So we're replacing the head wall. Sorry.
Where is the outfall? I didn't see that on any of the renderings.
Right by across from Mills Lawn.
Do I have a laser pointer? I'm not sure. There's a very faint pink line that's running up and down the drawing here. That's the new DEP outfall head wall that we are basically building a chamber for DEP to improve the pipe there.
And how many, since the outfall is next to the park, how many times during the given year has the outfall been utilized with a CSO overflow?
I could get back to you on that. I know that there's been investigations that EDC and DEP have done, but I don't know the frequency offhand.
Okay, I would like to know that just to make sure that we're not putting a recreation area next to an area that experiences significant and often CSO overfall that would make it not as pleasant a place to recreate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Goodrich?
I think I saw it from and you may have already addressed it, I think I saw it from the pictures, but there's a bike lane, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, is it cordoned off or is it sort of, so let me just explain why I'm asking. There's a bike lane on the West Side Highway, and it's right next to a walkway, so sometimes it can be a little bit dangerous because people keep walking on it. And so since I'm seeing this one and it looks kind of similar, I'm wondering if the design will have something that would prevent that so that it's good for both groups.
Thank you. So, yes, DOT had also recommended separating the bike lane from the street and from the sidewalk. So our plan right now is to have a protected by a curb and protected by planting, bike lane separate and apart from the right-of-way of Cromwell Promenade and from the Esplanade, which is the sidewalk directly adjacent to the bulkhead. So bike lane will be separated.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rampersad?
Yes, thank you. A lot of the questions I had were already asked, but I just have two quick questions with regards to the deliveries. Approximately how many trucks, when they are being delivered on those certain days, will be arriving? And what is the process? How long does it take to unload and for them to leave?
I'll pass it to our expert from Dock Builders.
Sure, thank you for the question. They would be arriving generally more than 2 to 3 days a week. The general deliveries are on site less than an hour. They would pull onto the pier, discharge what they have, and get off. Like I said before, even like a dumpster pickup or delivery would be even quicker than that.
But is about what, 2 or 3 trucks at a time when you schedule it, or?
No, it's generally one vehicle. They would be let on the pier. They would, make the delivery or the pickup, and then they would depart.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Yeah, back to Commissioner Cerullo.
I'm just shifting for a moment away from the physical project, and I just wondered, and perhaps this isn't within your purview of how this developed, but I'm just interested to understand the street name changes piece of this, and because, and again, I don't want to undo this process for moving forward over this, but I'm just interested in understanding, right now in the existing, we have Front Street, which meets Murray Holbert, which meets Hannah, which then meets Victory. Basically, it's one street, but it changes its name in different places that no one would ever be able to tell when that happens, unless you're looking at an actual map and you see the lines where it shifts. Hannah Street might be the one example where you get a sense of moving into another street, but all the other ones sort of flow. And for me, I saw this as being an opportunity to try to create a more rational street name change, if not just because it makes sense, but for emergency vehicle access and locating streets. The fact especially that Victory Boulevard is not, it's 60 feet below grade from Victory Boulevard, if not more, and only is only a little piece. And now what we've done, it seems that Murray Holbert Avenue has sort of been abolished from this flow, but we're turning that into the Cromwell Promenade as the name of the street versus the name of the promenade. And I just wonder how that came to be, and if we missed an opportunity to bring Front Street to Hannah and either extend Hannah as the loop that it is, with the promenade being the promenade that it is. it just is confusing to me that we're taking 4 streets and we're keeping 4 streets, we're just changing the names around. And again, I realize that's part of what this process is, and street name changes could occur at any time through other processes better than ULURP. But I just wondered how we got there.
Thank you. And we heard that during the certification session too, and we looked back at what was the rationale for Cromwell Promenade, and this was recommended by the Borough President's Office to honor George Cromwell, first Borough President, had 3 terms there, but also to honor the former Cromwell Pier that had fallen into the water. Parks is also undertaking that rec center redevelopment where they're naming it the Mary Dalton Center. Yes. So Cromwell Promenade would really be the last follow-through of Cromwell naming in this area. And technically, the mapped right-of-way extends to include the Esplanade. So to that point, I think this entire area is seen as the Promenade. But point well taken. We've looked back at Hannah Street and Victory Boulevard. This seemed to be consistent with upland streets and just kind of followed through to the waterfront dead ends. And the new Stapleton project also is changing the name of Mary Holbert to Front Street in the future when all of that gets built out.
Yes.
So again, point well taken. And like you said, it's not set in stone at this point. There's also an opportunity for ceremonial naming, not only of streets, but maybe of places. So I just want to remind the commission that that is an opportunity too.
Sure, I understand. I appreciate that, the history of that. And I definitely had no issue with the name Cromwell Promenade. I just wondered why it became the street name versus the name of the promenade. But I understand better how we got there. But I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, with that, thank you very much for being with us and for all of your efforts on behalf of the Esplanade and Pier. I do not see members of the public wishing to testify on this item, so we're going to close the hearing on calendar number 12 to 14. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
And Madam Secretary, I'm going to ask you to call our next item of the day.
For Brooklyn, calendar number 15, 180 Skimmerhorn Street parking lot, CD2C230047ZSK, public hearing in the matter of an application for a special permit concerning 180 Skimmerhorn Street parking lot.
Great, welcome. On behalf of the applicant, we have Anthony Borelli, welcome, and Jim Power. Glad to have you here, and whenever you are ready, we've got you down for 3 minutes. Welcome.
Great. Thank you, Chair Gorodnick, Vice Chair Knuckles, and Commissioners for this opportunity to present our application. My name is Anthony Borelli. I'm Senior Vice President for Edison Properties. How do I do this? That way. The parking lot we're talking about is at the corner of Skimmerhorn and Hoyt. It serves business, local business, institutional, and residential customers. Edison has owned the property since 2015, but Edison had been operating the parking lot for many years prior to that. As was mentioned earlier, the location is in the Central Business District at the edge of the Borum Hill neighborhood. And it's part of a larger zoning lot that includes 2 other tax lots, which the zoning lot has been fully developed. And as a result of that, there's no building floor area remaining. The other developments on the site include Breaking Ground's Skimmerhorn, the Brooklyn Hilton, and a residential apartment building, all to the west of our site. I mentioned zoning. It's currently zoned C61. It does provide for a mix of uses, but as I said before, the historical development of the zoning lot and FAR limitations in this district prevent any other development on the site. We did look at the feasibility of building on the site because we were curious. The site is very encumbered by MTA easement areas, but through preliminary review by engineers, we understand that although foundation would be complicated, it is technically possible. There's a small bit of terra firma, and we're now looking into what type of building loads the piles can take. So we are the only undeveloped site in the immediate area. A number of other sites on Skimmerhorn and the surrounding area have been developed recently, and some of them have very similar conditions to those that exist on our site in terms of terra firma and easement areas. Some more pictures. Our business decision is supported by analysis of parking data that we did for local census tracts. Over the 10-year period between 2011 and 2021, the number of households owning cars in the 3 census tracts I showed you earlier increased by about 50%. Roughly over a similar time period between 2013 and 2023, the number of parking spaces has been reduced by 76%.
Your time's up, but let me just pose the question to you about, I'll give you a chance to finish this up. So how's the parking process and what's the usage in the area? Why don't you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thank you. So 73% of our customers come from Brooklyn, 63% come from the 2 local zip codes. The Brooklyn Tabernacle is our largest user of our e-validation program. We also serve a number of small institutions in the area and government offices. We did look at, this is from our EAS, when we did our outreach to the community early on, we realized that the number of cars exiting was more of a concern than cars entering. And I'm just showing here that the average number of peak hour exits on a Saturday is 12, and on the weekdays it's 18. That's total exits during the peak hours. Off hours are considerably lower. We looked at the number of exits during the peak hour, comparing the no action with the with action, and the largest number of incremental exits is 15. And now Jim Power, our land use attorney, will complete the presentation and talk a little bit more on the details.
Okay, I think we're going to need to do that in the form of a question because we're out of time. So let me, go ahead.
I thought we had 3 minutes each.
Well, you didn't sign up as an applicant team, but that's okay. If it was a misunderstanding, we want to hear the details anyway. I will elicit it through a question. It does not matter. We certainly want to give you a chance to be heard today. So can you tell us a little bit about your land use application and perhaps your lawyer is available to do such a thing?
Jim Power.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair Gorodnick and Commissioners. Jim Power from Kramer 11. I'll be reviewing the proposed site plan and findings for the application. There would be 245 parking spaces, including lift spaces, 21 bicycle parking spaces, and 12 reservoir spaces. Vehicles would enter by a 12-foot curb cut on Skirmerhorn Street, which is smaller and further west from the intersection than the existing curb cut, and exit by a 10-foot curb cut on Hoyt Street. There would be a 4-foot wide landscaped area around the perimeter of the parking area, along with a 6-foot high decorative fence. At the corner of Hoyt and Skirmerhorn, there would be a landscaped seating area totaling 858 square feet. It would include 2 radial benches, adjacent seating areas, and permeable pavers. It would be planted with species from the city's recommended landscaping list and would incorporate a number of elements from the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership's public realm plan. Regarding the, let me just press the slide here. Yeah, this is the landscaping overview. Regarding the special permit, we show in our application that we meet the required findings. The lot would comply with the curb cut, surfacing, and screening requirements. It would add parking capacity, but would have no significant traffic or other adverse impacts. The applicant would reduce and relocate the curb cut to reduce the potential for pedestrian conflicts. And since the lot is served by a number of arterial streets, those streets would be adequate to handle any increase in traffic. Regarding the authorization, we are requesting reduction in the perimeter landscaping area from 7 feet to 4 feet and requesting to modify the requirements that the landscaped area be planted with trees and that the under drain, curb inlet, and ground cover be provided, and modification of the obstruction requirements to permit the 6-foot high decorative fence. We show in the the application that we've complied with the landscaping requirements to the maximum extent practicable. The lot is shallow and irregular, so that providing 7 feet of landscaping would severely restrict the location of parking spaces and the amount of circulation area. And the 6-foot-high decorative fence is necessary to provide adequate and safe separation of the sidewalk from the parking area. And these are a couple of sections through the landscaping, the perimeter on the left, and the landscaped seating area on the right. Some more details. This is a view from the corner with the rendered depiction of the site as improved with the proposed increase in parking. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I just have a few questions to kick it off, and either of you certainly should feel free here. First, on the subject of the MTA easement areas and the terra firma that you all looked at, can you say a little bit more about what you found and what the potential implications of that would be for different alternative uses of the site?
Yeah, we've just begun looking at it. We retained structural and geotech engineers to help us understand the conditions. Their preliminary assessment is that a foundation is possible. It'll just be complicated and more expensive than a typical foundation. Other sites on that block, notably the Ace Hotel, was developed recently, very similar conditions. And similarly, the breaking ground building immediately to the west of us, very similar conditions. So it's all about how I'm not an engineer, but they say it's possible.
Okay. And the thought would be, if you were to do something that was an alternative here, I recognize this is not what is before us today, but the question of if this were at some point in the future to be a residential building or something, what you're saying is physically your preliminary assessment is there's a possibility of that on this site.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And you also said that this was the only undeveloped site in the area?
I didn't do an exhaustive assessment survey, but certainly on Skimmerhorn, I think it is.
Okay. And if this application were approved, Commissioner Benjamin, she'll tell you the answer, but go ahead.
Yeah, of course, there's another parking lot on Skimmerhorn at the corner of Smith, which Edison also owns and operates, and that's undeveloped.
Don't forget that. Okay, let me ask you about the parking and the specific changes. So this is an effort to increase the overall number from 150 to 245 here. So if approved, you would, in fact, increase the parking on this site to 245, correct?
Yeah.
And if this application were disapproved or did not move forward for any reason, you would just be at 150.
Correct.
So disapproval of the application doesn't change the use on this site. It just would eliminate the additional roughly 100 spaces, 95 spaces.
Correct.
Okay. How far are you from the subway at this site?
You mean in terms of the subway box?
No, I mean the entrance to the subway at the site. So let's just say people, instead of parking there, lived in a building there. How far would they be from the subway?
Right. The subway entrance is across the street, and several of the easement areas that apply to our site are 4 access points to the tube below.
So the reason you mentioned that is that if there were a building there, there's potentially also a direct access to the subway within the 4 corners of that building. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Possible.
That's possible.
And there's also another subway pretty nearby as well, correct? Couple blocks?
Yeah, it is very centrally located in the central business district.
Okay. Just want to focus on the borough president's comments in his report about that refiling a different project at this location would require rezoning, that he would be supportive. Did you consider exploring housing at this site at any point?
Well, we initiated this application several years ago. We are owner-operators of parking facilities. We did want to invest in that property, and we felt that the special permit to increase capacity would help us from the financial perspective on that. And we thought it made sense. You know, we're parking lot operators. We have a parking lot. There's no FAR available. The special permit is available for a legitimate application, which I believe we have. I believe we made a good case for it. So that's why we pursued this course. That said, if there is conversation or if there is interest among community members in the department to work with us on a rezoning scenario that would facilitate a different type of development, we would be excited to engage in that process with you and with the community.
Great. Well, I can say that the department is certainly interested in having that conversation with you. It is a site that would be not only appropriate but ideal for housing, but that does not take away in any way from the legitimacy of your efforts to do what you're allowed to pursue under the law as a parking lot operator. So I don't want to, that's not a critique, but as a matter of land use, it certainly feels like this site should be residential. So let me just, I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to go to my colleagues and see if there are questions, comments here. Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much for the presentation. Thanks so much for sharing also the status and some of the history of the land use rationale or your land use decisions in terms of the proposal. I have a quick question. In terms of first, I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit on the research that you did in terms of parking needs in the area. I'm always a little skeptical in terms of basing decisions like this on those trends because, on one end, the census data tells us that much. On the other, we have so many policies, so many different public infrastructure investments to disincentivize the use of cars, particularly in areas that are across the street from one subway and then just a couple blocks from others. And so I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit, sort of like, how did you reach that conclusion? I mean, how are you thinking about the needs for parking here? And as an operator, as a parking operator, what is your rationale in that regard?
Right. So we have been operating parking facilities in this area for quite a while. And so our business operators know the business really well. And they've seen parking availability and trends change over time in downtown. The Macy's garage was closed, for example. Like that was a big deal in terms of parking availability. The reconfiguration of Skimmerhorn to accommodate one-way directional traffic and curbside uses that is not parking also affected the availability of parking in that immediate area. So there's lots of, there's that understanding that our operators get from just being there every day. And that in our business decision was informed primarily by our operators' recommendation. That said, we did want to look and see if we could substantiate need or at least talk about the availability of parking in the area with data. And so with the help of the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership and some census research, we presented what we found in terms of households that have cars and how they've increased over time and how the availability of off-street parking has decreased considerably over the past 10 years. So those are numbers that we got from the city's open database.
Thank you. That's useful. But let me also sort of like clarify what I mean. When you look at census data, you're looking at the trends about the people who live there. And, in a business district, you want to prioritize, I guess, sort of, the type of people that are coming here to shop or are coming here to work. And it sounds like your research is primarily focused on the needs of the people who live there, who need to basically park their car. Well, but then at the same time, we're sort of like discussing this in the middle of one of the busiest areas in Brooklyn. So,
yeah, you're right. I mean, the census data does describe households, but we did do outreach to the local bids. Atlantic Avenue, for example, actually likes the idea of having off-street parking available to customers. We heard similar concerns at the community board public hearing about visitors coming to downtown, whether they're going to the Tabernacle or shopping or out to dinner. We heard those stories. So that's I have anecdotal stories to tell you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The second question has to do with, this is also happening at a point where the city is doing a dramatic effort to decarbonize the city. And so, one thing is, whether or not these are going to be combustion engine vehicles or electric. I'm assuming you're going to have electric chargers, but the machines, the stacked machines are also going to require some energy. I'm wondering if you can share with us whether or not there are any plans to create on-site renewable energy to balance a little bit, the demand for additional electricity that you're going to create there. What is your thinking in that regard?
Yeah, we've thought of solar panels in some of our other facilities that are larger and not so space constrained. I mean, they are stackers. Theoretically, you could put them on top of the stackers, but that's probably not something our engineers would be okay with. But we have looked at solar installations in other facilities, not in Brooklyn, unfortunately.
So we can assume that, at least at the moment, this is not going to have any type of renewable energy that will somehow offset the additional demand?
No.
Okay.
That's not our plan currently.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And then I have one final question, if I have time. Yeah, thank you. So in terms of the special authorization, I'm wondering if you say that, and I want to understand, how did you assess that the two curb cuts will not generate an additional traffic issue in what's already a very busy area? I'm wondering if you can explain that, as that's one of the conditions that we look at in terms of moving forward.
Yeah, well, our EIS people aren't here, but I did attempt to show what the community was most concerned about, and that's like the number of cars exiting, because right now all cars enter and exit onto Skimmerhorn.
Yeah.
The future condition would be that they enter on Skimmerhorn and they all exit onto Hoyt. And so we heard from the Hoyt Street folks about how many cars are coming through and where they're going to go. But the EAS shows no significant adverse impacts regarding traffic. So that's the best I can do, is refer you to the EAS.
Thank you. I'll take a look. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Crowell, and Commissioner Gold.
Thanks. A number of my questions were answered in the colloquy with Commissioner Osorio. A couple of things. You mentioned the Tabernacle. When is the highest volume of traffic? Is that mostly the weekends, or are there weeknights as well?
There's definitely a peak on the weekends,
right,
but they do have programs 7 days a week there. And so we see visitors from the Tabernacle every day of the week.
Okay, and how many of the spots might be available on weekends, given considerations of residents or households that may be renting spots with you?
There's always, right now it currently serves that same mix. We'd have more, let's just say the proportions remain the same, just higher numbers overall.
Right, there's substantial construction in downtown Brooklyn right now, residential construction that would yield the demand for these additional spots. I'm just trying to get a sense of that. And also, when you did your studies with traffic, there's a substantial bike lane that goes alongside the parcel. How will safety be addressed with that? Because it's pretty hairy there. I live in that in that neighborhood.
Well, we've already installed signage at a current facility, but the proposed condition actually creates a wider space on either side of the curb cut through striping, so that visibility is actually greater. So I think with that design approach plus the signage should help. We haven't, knock on wood, we haven't had any incidents there so far.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Gold, and then Commissioner Benjamin.
Thank you. Just a couple more questions by way of follow-up to Commissioner Osorio's questions. So certainly one of the findings is that this will not create serious traffic congestion in what's already a busy area, and so that may be easier now. But I think one piece that maybe would help us is if you can speak a little bit about the demand there for parking currently. Assume that, obviously it sounds like this has taken some time, but I assume asking for more spots suggests that you have high utilization likely. Maybe you can talk about that. And then also, as you look at the mix that's there, how much of it is transient versus, monthlies, and maybe if you can add a little bit of color, just on the current look of residential versus business, if you can tell. I'm not sure you can tell.
Yeah. We probably can tell. I don't have that data with me now.
Okay.
But we do maintain a pretty good customer database, and I can report back through Jesse.
But even broad strokes, if you can get a sense, is this a commuter lot or is this?
It's a mix. It's not most of the customers there are not commuters. I'd say it's primarily a residential lot. And, you know, it changes over the week. So on the weekends, there's probably more transients as residents take their cars and leave the city. There's, you know, the availability is there for transients to come in or people visiting the neighborhood. So I think that's one difference is that if you look at all the cars in the lot on a weekday, it's going to be more residential, and it may be less residential on the weekends.
Got it. And then one other, and it's slightly off topic, but it's relevant given the discussions around parking right now. Can you just speak a little bit about this? This is, I mean, it's the first time I think I'm seeing 4 stackers. And, you know, essentially if this were an enclosed building, presumably DOB would be regulating some piece of that right now. They are, given what happened a couple of months ago. So just curious if you could speak a little bit about, you know, the safety of the 4 stackers, particularly given how heavy the current EVs are and, you know, anything that you've seen there, because I think that's probably relevant.
Yeah, I should add that you know, Edison has 2 other parking lots on Skimmerhorn. The other 2 have these 4 high stackers. We use these 4 high stackers in a number of other locations in Manhattan and in New Jersey. In New York, we have an MEA number for this machinery, which describes its specifications and how it's used. And so as far as DOB is concerned, they're okay with that. We are mindful of the weight of vehicles. The structures are pretty sturdy, and we haven't had any issues with I don't think we have any issues with stacking 4 Teslas on top of each other. But I'll confirm that.
I was going to say, you probably would avoid that, I would guess. Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Benjamin, and Commissioner Bozo.
Hello, good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
I have 2 different. Do you also operate, since you brought up the fact that you operate the facility that's diagonally across the street, do you also operate the Ace Hotel parking?
No.
Okay, because I was wondering about the utilization rate between the 3 facilities. I know that a lot of court personnel use these lots. And I was hoping you could give us an idea of the utilization among court personnel versus other activities. I know you know the Tabernacle because they have the validation program. Does the court facility have a validation program also?
I don't know. But I can report back more holistically on our customer profile and
on both, if you could.
Yeah, on all of them.
And the second thing that I know some in the community were concerned about is that with congestion pricing coming, the community has always had a concern that they will become a destination where people drive, park in Brooklyn Heights, Cobble Hill, and then take the train so they don't have to pay. Are you anticipating that as new demand, or how do you see that affecting your business plans at these locations?
We're not planning for it, but we probably will see new customers who want to avoid the tolls. That said, they will be paying for off-street parking, and it would not be on-street. You know, they'd be paying the full rate plus tax.
What is the rate currently for? What's the drop rate for the first half an hour or hour?
It varies.
Monday through Friday rate.
Yeah, I mean, it could be between $25 and $50, depending on what's
happening. So the drop rate?
The
first half an hour or the first hour, usually you get like a...
It changes, but everything is posted.
Oh, Consumer Affairs, and I know you would, of course, follow all Consumer Affairs regulations. Could you provide us with that, information about what the rates are there? Because I'd like to understand whether this is going to become a destination for congestion pricing.
Sure.
And as I said, if you can tell us kind of the percentage of court users. I understand this is heavily used by court officers, and the city is required to provide parking for court officers under their union contract.
Yeah, ironically, we also have customers who work for transit.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bozorg, and then Vice Chair Knuckles.
I just wanted to say, commend your openness to exploring other uses on this site. I do think the borough president's comments are important, and I understand it's a complicated site, but I think it's great that you are looking into the conditions for potential rezoning. I understand there's a demand from a public policy perspective. Sometimes it's hard to imagine feeding all the demand for car usage given our climate crisis. So I think continuing the conversation about other uses is also important.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I certainly agree with that. Vice Chair Knuckles.
Well, yes. Good morning, Anthony. I just wanted to go back to your earlier remarks about why a housing option was not viable, at least at this moment. Could you reiterate?
Sure. So when the zoning lot was developed, there are larger developments to the west of this site. The floor area was transferred from our site to the westernmost site on Smith Street. And I believe full 6 FAR was transferred. The zoning district that's currently there provides for 6 FAR. And so that's why there's 0 remaining buildable FAR there. So a rezoning would be required to address that limitation. And I should note, we were not the owners. Like, we did not do this to ourselves. Yeah.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. All right. Thank you very much for being with us today. We appreciate it. And we'll look forward to a couple of follow-up items. So thank you. With that, we're going to close the hearing on this item, calendar 15. I see no members of the public here to testify. And we will move on to the next. Madam Secretary.
Borough Brooklyn, calendar numbers 16 and 17. 703 Myrtle Avenue rezoning, CD3. Calendar number 16, C220453 ZMK. Calendar number 17, N220454 ZRK. Public hearing in the matter of an application for zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 703 Myrtle Avenue rezoning.
Great, thank you. I see 4 people signed up, and they are all on Zoom, and it is a little difficult for me to discern if they are all part of the team. But I have Alexia Landisman, Haley Paget, Jake Levy, and Richard Lobel. So I am going to, it looks like I'm calling on Alexia Landisman. So Ms. Landisman on Zoom, whenever you are ready, please go ahead. And if those folks are part of your team, you can go ahead and identify them. So thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel. I'm going to be handling the presentation with Alexia.
Okay, so and are Jake Levy and Haley Paget part of your team?
They are.
Okay, all right. It was a little unclear in my notes over here. So, how much time? Okay, you're on for 3 minutes, Mr. Lobel. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Once again, Richard Lobel. The project is the 703 Myrtle Avenue rezoning. As you can see in front of you from the summary, this project seeks to rezone several lots along Myrtle Avenue in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, from an existing M11 district to an R70 C24 district. On the subject site, which is roughly 8,600 square feet, this would allow for the development of a new 8-story building with roughly 48,000 square feet, 54 dwelling units, of which 18 would be permanently affordable units. This would also, of course, involve a zoning text amendment to Appendix F for purposes of establishing mandatory inclusionary housing. The applicant here is proposing option 2 within the project area. The next slide shows the statistics with regards to the proposed development. The building is at 8 stories. I understand that certain commissioners wanted to discuss the height of the building, and Ms. Padgett would be happy to do so. Again, this is a total height of the building of 95 feet, despite that 115 feet is the maximum in the district. There would be 11 vehicular spaces, 28 bike parking spaces, and again, the number of units would be 54. At option 2, this would result in a third of the units as affordable, that is 15 units. The next slide shows the zoning map. Admittedly very dense in this area, but we're going to go to the area map in 2 slides to show you with a little bit more specificity. There we go. So there's the area map, which really demonstrates why this particular rezoning is so appropriate for this area. As you can see, the site is highlighted with the dotted line, and the development site is in red. This would be rezoned from an M11 to an R7D C24. This district is appropriate for many reasons. One is that there was a previous rezoning, the 723 to 733 Myrtle Avenue rezoning in 2017, which rezoned the 2 block frontages immediately to the east to the same district, R7D C24. Prior to that time in 2012, the city initiated Bed-Stuy North rezoning, rezoned roughly 140 blocks or portions of blocks to the east of the site, including, as you can see, some of that R7D in the lower right corner, about 5 block frontage to the east of this site along Myrtle, or to the east of Nostrand. So you have here Myrtle Avenue, a wide street at 75 feet. We are central to transportation. We've got excellent bus transportation as well as a subway several blocks to the east. This is seen as a major thoroughfare in the area. And importantly, the community board voted in favor of the application by a vote of 33 to 9. It's supported by the Brooklyn Borough President. Essentially, the entire area sees the legitimacy of zone these M11 parcels, which are underutilized parcels and often vacant, as it is at the site, to mixed-use parcels, which here, being paired with a C24 district, would result in ground floor commercial. The remaining slides contain photographs of the site and surrounding area, as well as proposed layouts for the building. And I would merely note that there is a healthy representation of 1s, 2s, and 3s in the building. And with that, the entire applicant team is happy to answer any questions. Did I hit my 3 minutes?
Great, you did it, Mr. LaBelle. Thank you. Right under the wire. I do not see any questions for you. So we're going to let you off easy today. Thank you for being with us, and I don't see other members of the public wishing to testify on this item. So we're going to close the hearing on 703 Myrtle Avenue, calendar 16 and 17, and we're going to move on to the next item for today. Madam Secretary.
For Brooklyn, calendar numbers 18 and 19, Belmont Osborne rezoning, CD 16, calendar number 18, C220438 ZMK, calendar number 19, N220439 ZRK. Public hearing in the matter of an application for a zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning Belmont Osborne rezoning.
Great. Thank you very much. And on behalf of this application here in the room, we have Diane Lubes, Howard Goldman, Charles Al-Wakil, and Kimberly Headley. The applicant team, welcome. You have 10 minutes. Good to have you here.
Good morning. I'm Kimberly Headley, representing the strategic planning team for this rezoning effort. The project is R6C13 and C43, moving to R7A C24. Oh, okay. Next slide. Most of the team is present except for the owner, Mr. Fideli, and Mr. Headley, and Mr. Williams. Next slide. This is the local support to date, the Central Brooklyn EDC, of which we have done a full presentation with, and they have committed to working with the owner to provide job training, MWBE hiring, and local hiring for both temporary and permanent construction jobs. We also have a commitment letter from the borough president and, of course, the approval of CB16. We are members of the Pitkin Avenue bid. We have several local support from clergy, as well as many community members from the senior community and Brownsville Recreational Center and the Brownsville Old Timers Association. Basically, I just wanted to speak on behalf of the owner who has been in the Brownsville community for over 47 years, running the People's Choice supermarket. And it was his desire that as he closes and transitions to another place, that he would construct housing that is designed specifically for the residents of Brownsville. Most of the money that comes through Brownsville stays in Brownsville. The people that he wants to have this project built for are generational members within the community, from seniors to young adults returning to the community, living there. So it's really important for us to understand that while we know gentrification takes place and it's evident, this project specifically, he wants to leave for those who live and work. They have never left the community, but want to continue to grow their families there. So we are hoping today that as we present this rezoning application, that this will be strongly considered, as the owner is adamant about making sure that the people who helped him to be successful as a supermarket owner and owner of several properties, he can leave this legacy for those who follow. Next up will be Howard Goldman, who will present the next portion of our presentation. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, nice to be here today. Howard Goldman, representing the applicant. Okay, how do I work this thing here?
Next slide. They'll do it for you.
Next slide. I could talk to the thing?
No. You talk to it or say it just out loud, you'll be fine.
Next slide, please.
Well done.
Thank you. The proposed actions, zoning map amendment, R6C13 and C43 to R7A with a C24 commercial overlay, and a text amendment to map an MIH area. Next slide. The area in red is the area to be rezoned. On the left is the existing zoning. Most of it's R6 with the C13, and the white area on the right above the slanted lines is the C43. Proposal is to rezone it to entirely R7A with the C24 commercial overlay. Next slide. Okay. What does the rezoning do? Basically, it increases the residential FAR from 2.43 to 4.6. It actually lowers the community facility FAR from 4.8 to 4. And it somewhat lowers the commercial FAR. The C43 portion goes from 3.4 to 2.0. Maximum building height. Currently, there is no height limit. It's a height factor open space. And under the proposed rezoning, there will be a 95-foot, 9-story height limit, but the proposal is for 75 feet tall building, 7 stories. Next slide. So what's going on here? The architect will follow me. He'll show you this, but basically there are 2 buildings across the street from each other. Each building will have 110 units, 220 units total. Each building will be 4.6 FAR. There will be 38,000 square feet of retail space in both buildings, so that's 19 each on the average. And we are trying our best. We are working with HPD to build a 100% affordable project that will be affordable to an average AMI of 60%. We've met with the commissioner of HPD and senior staff. We've submitted some financial information. We have another meeting with the HPD staff scheduled in a week or two this month. That's my presentation. Next slide. Oh, I didn't do land use rationale. I won't go into it in great detail, but this is 1961 zoning currently. It's located at crossroads of commercial vehicular corridors, tying together the Pitkin BID, the East New York BID, and the East New York IBZ. There's mass transit. It's in a transit zone. It's got Long Island Railroad. As far as the housing goes, the Community Board 16, 2023 Statement of Community District Needs recognized that there's lots of public housing. There are many homeless shelters, but there's a real need for permanent, affordable housing that doesn't fit into those categories. And you'll see when the architect speaks that this site is actually surrounded on 3 sides by several NYCHA projects. It's in fact a cluster of NYCHA housing. And then economic investment, Pitkin Avenue has experienced extreme disinvestment since the 70s. We're adding a lot of retail space and building height. You saw that 7-story, 75 feet. There are actually 2 7-story hotels on the block that are homeless, used for homeless shelters that are taller than this building. So with that, I would call Charles Al-Wakil, who's with Red Flux Architecture, who's project architect.
Sure. Hi. Next. Okay, so we were certified on April 24th. Here's notes on when we had a full board meeting and a public hearing with the borough president. Both were favorable votes. Worth noting that even before we started drawing floor plans, we were speaking with a community board here. Next. The site is located at the corner. One of the sites is located at the corner of Osborne and Belmont. The other one is in the mid-block portion of Osborne. And that one runs through all the way to Watkins. We've conceived of the first site as a single building, whereas the second one is a single building with 2 building segments. Next. We've also, even from the beginning when we started here, we thought about the adjacent building typologies and how these tall buildings are to the north and the south. And you look at what's been constructed here, it's all peppered, basically. You see 7-story buildings in the vicinity. We think that a 7-story building was adequate. Next. Uses. So extremely diverse uses in the neighborhood. Lots of small scale commercial. Worth noting, within the Osborne site, the owner had to construct a 100 by 100 foot floor plate for Dollar Tree. That was a custom build because they could not find any retail in the vicinity that provided such a large plate. So one of the things that's driving our wanting to have a commercial ground floor, or basically a larger ground floor that's non-residential, is the scarcity of large commercial spaces in the vicinity. Most of the commercial spaces that we saw were 25, at most 50 feet wide by 100. Sometimes you even had shallower lots than that. So we wanted something that would attract anchor tenants to the neighborhood, larger tenants that would provide job stability and things like that. Next. So this is our height study, just showing what's in the vicinity. We can just keep going. This is the site highlighted. Again, vacant on the north part, on the mid-block site. Used to be the warehouse for the supermarket. The other one is People's Choice Supermarket with the Dollar Tree that would be redeveloped, and there's short-term retail leases on the corner of Belmont and Osborne. These were set up so that they would be, again, short-term and at a market rate discount because they were populated with the idea that we would go through the rezoning.
Time.
Great. Okay, thank you. Do you want to finish that thought? So yes, again, I think the South continues on to the next slide, if that's okay. So let's finish it up with this slide then. Go ahead. So again, full floor commercial. We've been thinking about it that way. And again, 7-story buildings, 13 foot floor heights on the first ground floor. Above, they keep going on to 75. 75 is the maximum base height, minimizing transfer floors. That's the driver for this, and that's next. So you have a rendering of how we see this thing
going about. Again, it's a reinforced concrete building with ornamental panels on the front. Next. Again, same sort of building typology. Again, it's a small, I know that in the prior setup, there was a question about what was on the ground floor in that small little 25-foot portion. That will be retail and the lobby as well. And next.
Let us stop you there. And if there are, you can just, my question for you will be, what is on the remaining slides as to what would we see? And then if commissioners want to ask about them.
Mostly massing models, nothing else specific.
Mostly, what would you say? Mostly
massing,
imaging?
yeah.
Massing. Okay, good. Okay, let me just start off with the questions, and I know there are other questions other than mine. On the affordability component of this building, what you are seeking from the City Planning Commission is a zoning map and zoning text amendment. The zoning text amendment is to map MIH. That's our piece of the puzzle. But so we are evaluating this presently in the context of an MIH proposal, but you are in the process of a conversation, it sounds like, with HPD. So tell us a little bit more about where that stands, what program you're pursuing, and how we should think about that in this broader context.
Sure. Howard Goldman. We're not looking for rent subsidy programs. We're looking for two financing mechanisms, which, if not granted by HPD, are at least controlled by them. One is the low-income housing tax credits, which HPD allocates in the city, and the other is state tax-exempt housing bonding, which, again, HPD has a large say in how those bonds are utilized in the city. Those are the two financing mechanisms we're discussing with HPD. We discussed it with the commissioner, discussed it with staff. They asked for information. We're going back in a week or two.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm going to start with Commissioner Marin on Zoom and then Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask the same question, but now that you've asked your question, I actually have a different form of that question. So you're looking for low-income housing tax credits and bond financing. Would that be applicable only to the MIH portion or to the entire building?
No, it's for the entire building, but we still have to comply with the MIH for 25%. But it's for the whole project.
Correct. So if you're asking for financing for the entire building, and I heard the other gentleman, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, discuss the fact that the building might be 100% affordable. Is still that the goal?
That is absolutely the goal, 100% affordable. We heard that from the community board. We heard that from the council member, and we're trying to do that.
And so the remainder of the portion, either the 70 or 75%, that is not part of this action, would that remain affordable? How long would that remain affordable would be the question.
I don't know the answer off the top of my head. It would be determined by the bond financing and the terms of the low-income housing tax credits. I see one of the developers, Mr. Henry Hughes, has come up, and Henry, I guess, can explain that.
Well, the City of New York would require perpetual affordability if they grant these tax credits and bond financing. So these would be units that would remain affordable forever.
Understood. And then lastly, was the question that I had posed when this was first presented, was the lack of family-sized units. I see you have studios 1s and 2s, but you have you have no family-sized units. Are you contemplating including them in the development or not?
Can I jump in on that? So right now, we have revised our plans. Our current unit mix, and I actually just pulled this up. So we are contemplating 12 three-bedroom units on the Osborne and Belmont site. Right now, as it stands, we're looking at 74 zero-bedrooms, 93 one-bedrooms, 41 two-bedrooms, and 12 two-bedrooms. That's 6% roughly. Sorry, three-bedrooms. And that's roughly 5.5% of three-bedrooms.
And I just want to say that was a great question. This program is not set in stone. It's subject to discussion with HPD, and we will discuss that. You have our commitment. We will discuss those issues with HPD.
HPD will definitely ask for more family units, which we would program in our negotiation with HPD. We would program more 2- and 3-bedroom units into the building.
Thank you. I do understand that. I appreciate the answers to the questions. And I also want to commend you. I don't see a lot of applications in Brooklyn that would want to make buildings 100% affordable. So I really want to commend this team. It's something that I see a lot in the Bronx. And I think that due to the influx of immigrants that we have, due to the lack of affordable housing, there is a dire need for affordable housing in the city of New York. So I really commend you and applaud you on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Knuckles, followed by Commissioner Bozarg.
Thank you. My question was about the retail, since at least a portion of the site is now occupied by a supermarket. What is your vision of retail in this new development?
The Dollar Tree, which is a variety store, I guess, a discount variety store, will be relocated to the first building that's built, which is the one across the street from where it currently is. And they will be given the option of moving back when the second building is built. As far as the supermarket goes, it's a good site for a supermarket, even though there is a C-Town almost adjacent to it. So I guess that's undetermined at this point.
I would just say that I'm in the supermarket business as well as being in the development business, and our attitude is where there's competition in supermarkets, you get better economic performance because people come into an area and can have choices. So that we would definitely look for a supermarket on this site as part of the development strategy.
And what would be the footprint?
Probably it would be about under 10,000 square feet, but it would be that type of supermarket. It wouldn't be bigger than that. It would be under 10,000 square feet, probably about 9,800.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, Commissioner Bozarg, and then Commissioner Benjamin.
Hi, thank you, and thanks for the thoughtfulness of this proposal. I just had a couple more questions on the affordability. I understand you're in conversations with HPD. Is the commitment to 100% affordability a commitment you're willing to make kind of at this point of rezoning? Because oftentimes with private applications, the developer's already selected an HPD program, knows exactly which financing tool is being used. We can kind of look at the affordability being proposed. There is a chance here, of course. I'm trying to just understand the commitment you're making, especially in the event that if you're in preliminary conversations with HPD, if they can't fit you into the pipeline for 5 years, let's say, or 3 years, I understand their pipeline is long. Is there still a commitment to wait to use that financing, or is there a scenario where you'd go back to just a market MIH proposal?
There's a lot of sub-questions built into that question. If the low-income housing tax credits and the bonding can be provided, we think we have a pretty good shot at it. Then it is an absolute commitment to all affordable.
Okay.
I mean,
so it's contingent on, regardless of the timing.
Contingent on the financing. Now, if it's not approved, I don't know. Will 421A come back in some form? We don't know. Nobody knows.
Just say that without a 421A program, this would not be buildable as a market rate housing project. And in many senses, it won't be buildable as a market rate housing project anyway because of the presence of the NYCHA housing in the area. So that our interest in this is primarily as 100% affordable housing. That's what we do. That's what we want to do here. And the owner would have to, if the owner has to wait 3 years, he has to wait 3 years. I don't think he will find another developer who will come in and develop this as 70% market rate housing.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Benjamin, thank you.
Hi, mine is just a design question and a pet peeve. When you showed the design of the rendering, there are no windows on the side, and the building you show that I believe is a NYCHA building that's down the street. You also say there are no windows where I assume you're putting the stairway and other types of...
Can we drop back to the rendering, and that way we can have a quick... there's a lot of preliminary stuff there, so it's not, like, we would definitely aim for the 10% openings that are permitted on the adjacent sites. Like, there's no way that you want to set that up. We were being conservative here, and that was the reason for that, for the.
Okay, if you could go back more.
I think, forward, I think. Forward.
Oh, the rendering you're.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there.
There.
This one or the other one?
No, one more.
Yes.
The one you just passed.
Right.
That
so that's
one.
Completely diagrammatic. We would definitely be aiming to have the 10% opening
Okay,
on the side.
because you see, what I'm referring to is the building that is not yours, and I understand that.
You know
but
why? I'll tell you why. That over there requires protected openings, and there's not a 10% actual opening available for that because it's a commercial building, because it's a hotel. So the opening requirements are different than the ones for
Okay,
for
but
a
you would
residential
try to
building.
do something that made it look
course.
less.
Yes, yes. We take any opportunity that we can to make
They'll
something.
put pressure on the architects to put windows.
Okay,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
just that so many buildings
rest of me
now
every time.
don't have, because they put the emergency stairways there and other kinds of
Not
things.
emergency stairways for the whole thing. I think this was rendering put together just to show you the mass of the
Okay.
building.
Right. But yeah, we definitely would take advantage of the 10% openings on the sides.
And had you thought at all about alternate energy sources? I just have to ask for my.
We're not there yet, but we do know we're not there yet. But we'll definitely comply with the green roofs requirement and whatever else is required of us.
And we also comply with solar cells on the roof of the building, which would be something that we would explore here.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate all you're doing because I think it's really a great project, both for this neighborhood
Very
and for the
important
city.
to have housing that's at this level, because there's a lot of NYCHA housing, which is for poorer people, but there's nothing for people in the middle income area here. And that's something that we're very committed to providing.
It's the old Mitchell-Lama program.
Yep. I live in a building that was a Mitchell-Lama building, which was converted to a co-op building later on, but this will never be converted. This will be affordable forever. That'll be part of the city commitment.
It's also, kind of quickly note a quick zoning thing. So part of making this building entire and designing this building this way is that even if at some point this thing turned partially market rate, then you would be creating a non-compliance for parking because we're proposing zero parking here, and that is that having the zero parking requirement. Getting away with the zero parking requirement is subject to having the affordable units there in the entirety of the building.
Yeah. I would like to say that I think that that you guys ought to be giving out parking waivers and not providing for parking in buildings, because that's how we're going to become greener in the city, is by providing less parking in these buildings for people.
Although I'm not convinced that not having parking reduces the number of cars or car ownership.
It does. If you reduce number of car parking spaces, that is the best way to reduce the amount of car ownership. That will force people into the subways and onto the buses, and to, as we develop a stronger Uber system where people can call up and get cars to take them places, that will be, the restrictions on parking are going to be key. And the City Planning Commission is critical in restricting the parking. And, I develop buildings where you make me build parking that is against the city's green requirements. And the best way to get greener in the city of New York is to reduce the number of parking spaces provided to units.
I remember this debate from 43 years ago.
I mean, when you were in the council's office here?
Thank you, Commissioner. And I will note before I go to Commissioner Kermani and Commissioner Osorio that we are, in fact, taking a look at the requirements that today are interfering with the creation of housing as a result.
They make it more expensive for us to build housing.
As a result of requiring parking, and we're creating the dynamic where you have to make a choice of housing versus parking. So we are taking a look at that and encourage you to keep an eye out for our housing text amendment, which is coming in the next several months. So
we will.
Thank you. Commissioner Kermani.
Thank you. I actually don't have a question, just a comment. Just thank you so much for the presentation, and to echo Commissioners Benjamin and Bozorg on the thoughtfulness of the proposal. As somebody who worked in Brownsville for about 10 years, I'm still there 3 days a week because my kid plays on a football team out of Brownsville, and still feel very connected to the community. I think the adage or the thought that public housing prevents gentrification is becoming less and less true, although is still slightly relevant. But I think it's so important that in Brownsville and other communities, that permanently affordable housing that, to your point, allows second generation folks who want to stay in the neighborhood to be able to do that in a way that's affordable, and that the kind of dominant narrative of Brownsville, which is often created by folks who are not from Brownsville, as a place, as a place that is poor, no jobs, dangerous, all of these things, is not true.
Right.
That it is also a community that's dominated by families. They're working people, joy, community. And so I think developments like this support that the actual narrative of a place, and I appreciate that.
Most people are unaware of the fact that the public housing is now being largely dominated by people who rent public housing units and go to Florida and rent out their unit to 2 and 3 families who occupy the public housing. And that's another problem that has to be dealt with.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I echo the comments from my colleagues in terms of the importance of this proposal. I have 2 questions. The first question builds on Vice Chair Knuckles' question on the retail. And I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit on the retail space. I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit on the land use rationale. In my mind, sort of the proximity, it makes sense, particularly given the proximity to Pitkin Avenue, the business improvement district, and everything that happens on first floor. Obviously, the history of the site in terms of the supermarket. But in some of the work that I've done in the neighborhood, I've realized it's always been really clear that second floors on Pitkin are always vacant. And so I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about sort of like, you know, what is your take on that on the one hand, and how are you sort of connecting with that type of trend? Obviously, you're very close to it, but also specifically regarding the former, like the history of the other building. So one, you're saying that you're going to have retail, you're going to bring back the previous tenant and so forth. On the other side, which is in one of the pictures, there's that very interesting Made in Brownsville mural, later used design center, which we know are not there. The department really clearly clarified for us that what we see as industrial uses in the land use map are really not manufacturing uses, it's just warehousing. So it all makes sense. I'm just wondering if there are opportunities to bring the other tenants back as well, or tenants like that are creating a new workforce in Brownsville to attract, to connect people from the neighborhood with better paying jobs, other than just, you know, the type of commercial that you've already secured. So I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit on, you know, how is the development contributing to that part?
So the site that's to the east of Osborne Street, that was formerly occupied by the Fish and Seafood Market. They have relocated in the neighborhood, so they're still there. The variety store, Dollar Tree, they're going to stay. There are 2 small retail tenants that were at the corner. One has vacated, and the other is they're rent-free right now. They're being allowed to stay rent-free until they can find an appropriate space to relocate to. As far as how this relates to Pitkin Avenue, if that was one of your questions.
Well, I think we can say on the first part of it, and just to clarify, I'm not saying that you're displacing them. I'm wondering, I see this as an opportunity to attract more of the other type of tenants that have always been around. And so I'm wondering if, when you say commercial, there's room for that type of more like a community facility workforce development opportunity that could operate in the type of commercial space that you're describing.
Can I jump in?
Yes, please.
So one of the things that's kind of important to note is that a lot of those second floors in Pitkin may be empty, but they're empty because of the dimensions that you see in Pitkin. For those lots, they're all relatively small lots. You rarely ever see a large assemblage that has a 10,000 square foot footprint in Pitkin. And that was one of the things that became really apparent to us when we were running through the land use rationale and describing the area. We wanted to provide something that's unique and provide some sense of stability, and that's kind of the goal of having the larger floor plates at the ground floor that are mostly devoted to non-residential use. Above, we're trying to create housing units. That's part of the goal here as well. Also, the C24 district allows us to have a relatively high amount of retail and non-residential use without having to generate a parking requirement for it. So we're taking that opportunity as well, and that's kind of the rationale for those larger spaces and having the C24 rezoning. And again, we know the demand is there because we constructed a building for Dollar Tree. So in a way, we're trying to, again, stability is the goal here. Larger tenants that can take over these spaces and provide stable jobs and stay there and be destinations.
You know, I'm not challenging the demand. I am acknowledging that you'll have no problem filling them.
I hope so.
In fact, I was saying that on Pitkin, you have empty second floors that could sort of cater to that type of commercial development. What I'm suggesting, encouraging for you to consider is to think about whether on the other lot, you could actually encourage or attract some of the workforce development, sort of like actors, neighborhood anchor institutions that could provide or could create a workforce of higher paying jobs in the neighborhood. But that's just
makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean, we will end up subdividing the spaces. That's just what happens in these larger plates.
Well, thank you for addressing my question. I have another question that I wanted to ask you, which is another reason why this project is so exciting. It sort of builds on a history of different sectors working together to improve, as you really clearly noted, a history of disinvestment in infrastructure, particularly in terms of energy. And so a couple weeks ago, we heard the mayor's office describe how the EDC Energy Accelerator is working with developers like you to actually go beyond the minimum, which you clearly describe in terms of the resilient and sustainability measures. You're matching all of them. So specifically, there's been a history on not just increase renewables, but also interconnect the buildings to create microgrids and to build sort of energy efficiency instead of one building at a time, one block at a time. This has been the case with some of the NYCHA developments that you noted, but particularly with the Brooklyn Public Library and so forth, which are on both sides of your development. So given that you're one developer working on two different blocks, this is another really interesting opportunity to explore the type of incentives that the city is providing. My question is whether the city has approached you or has helped you understand how to navigate this opportunity, because this is an opportunity for big-time energy improvements.
I don't think we have, but this sounds fascinating, and we'll definitely look into it. I mean, it makes only sense that we would try to not have redundant systems on both sides.
Okay. I really encourage you to look into that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your presence here and for answering all of the questions from the commission. I will note we do have one member of the public wishing to testify, and they are present on Zoom. So we'll thank you again for your being here. I'm going to call Mallory Thatch from the Brownsville Community Justice Center for 3 minutes on Zoom. And Ms. Thatch, whenever you are ready, go right ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
It looks like Mallory's rejoining as a panelist right now.
Hi, sorry, it prompted me to do so. First
That's
off,
okay, not a problem. Whenever you're set.
awesome, great. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak on this and say that a lot of encouraging changes have been made to this proposal based on the first time that I read it. So thank you for that. I also want to say that I really agree with some of the points that Commissioner Osorio was making in the last bit there, and that's kind of what I would like to testify on. So, hello, my name is Mallory Thatch, and I currently work as a senior program manager at the Brownsville Community Justice Center. The center is located at 50 Belmont Ave, which is directly across from Building 1 in this proposal. I'm testifying to express my concerns and suggested amendments to the proposed development project involving Building 1 and Building 2, respectively, proposed in the Belmont Osborne rezoning application. Though I believe much has been done to improve this application since it was first proposed, I believe more can also be done to ensure that this development and any development in Brownsville is fundamentally rooted in uplifting and enhancing the lives of current Brownsville residents. I understand the need for responsible urban development and the growth of our community. However, the current plan is lacking a comprehensive approach to address the holistic well-being of our neighborhood. The plan seems to focus primarily on the construction of residential and commercial spaces without adequately accounting for the needs of our community members. As responsible citizens, we must consider not only the physical structures that will be erected, but also the social, economic, and cultural implications that these buildings will have on the lives of our community members. The plan mentions the bottom floor of Building 1 to include 7,873 square foot of commercial or community facility, and the bottom floor of Building 2 to include 17,470 square foot of commercial or community facility. Under this proposed land use, community spaces could include clubs, organizations, community centers, non-commercial recreation centers, and among other uses. Though these entities could benefit the neighborhood, the developer has done little to no, and the owner have done little to no work to ensure that this space would be devoted to community uses, not solely commercial. The current uses of Building 1 include 1 local business, 1 chain business, and 2 community spaces. Losing these community spaces would be a great detriment to the neighborhood. I advocate for the inclusion of community spaces that can cater the needs of nonprofit organizations or serve as creative hubs for our community members. The proposal mentions a significant amount of square footage allocated for commercial community facilities use, and I believe that 40% or 10,137 square feet could be dedicated to community-oriented initiatives. A nonprofit resource center or a community makerspace on the first floor of these buildings could provide a platform for skill sharing, collaboration, and innovation. Such spaces could become the heart of our community, promoting interaction and enabling residents to connect, learn, and grow together. Another major aspect that is noticeably absent from the proposal.
Time.
Sorry, our system unceremoniously cuts you off after 3 minutes. Let me see if there are, but we appreciate your testimony. Let me see if there are questions, and there are. Commissioner Osorio, Commissioner Goodrich.
Thank you. Can I do the same and ask what you were about to say so you can finish your testimony?
Yeah. Oh, wait, you're giving me, okay, great. Another major aspect that is noticeably absent from the proposal is the provision of job opportunities for local community members. I understand that the owner and developer have coordinated with the Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation to hire local MWBE businesses to help with developing the property. And this is an excellent first step in creating the opportunity for community. It doesn't address the need for employment after the development is constructed. Security guard, landscapers, building managers, maintenance personnel, and other building personnel are all needed to support a development like this. In an effort to responsibly develop in Brownsville, it's necessary to hire local for these positions as well. It is imperative that any development project contributes to the economic growth and sustainability of the area. And I strongly urge that a significant portion of employment opportunities within the completed buildings be reserved for residents of our community. This not only ensures that our local workforce benefits from the project, but also fosters a sense of community ownership and pride among the people who call this neighborhood home. In conclusion, I respectfully request that the development plan be amended to better address the needs and aspirations for the community. Thank you for your attention on these critical matters, and I hope that you'll consider the suggestions presented here and work towards a more inclusive, community-centric development plan.
I have a question, Chair. Given that the developer team is here, can they respond to that idea, that recommendation?
So let's, if they're willing to come back, and it looks like they are. Go right ahead.
As As to the first point, it was always the intention to see that the permanent hiring in the facilities reach out to the neighborhood and see that those jobs are available to people in Brownsville to the extent we're permitted to do so. As far as the second point goes, it's an economic issue to be discussed with HPD, what kind of rents are required to make the project financially feasible. Community facility is a permitted use. It's generally below market rent, but it's certainly something we're open to.
I would just say that the current city regulations require us to hire and pay building supers and building porters. The wages that are actually higher than the wages we could hire supers and porters for. And so we definitely want to have a super who lives in the building, who will be a resident of the community, and that applies to the porters too. So all of that is something that is part of the process that the city has already taken a great step toward making the reality in new buildings in New York.
Is there a way we can also ensure, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think what you're referring to is the requirement to use 32BJ employees, and that at times can conflict with hiring locally because they have to be in 32BJ.
They don't have to be in, they have to be paid at the rate that 32BJ is paid. They don't have to be members of 32BJ.
Okay, thank you. All right. You all are set. I'm going to go to Commissioner Goodridge for a question to the, it's a question to the applicant. Okay. All right, Ms. Thatch, let me see if there's any other questions for Ms. Thatch. No other questions for Ms. Thatch. Thank you. We're just going to finish up with questions for the applicant. Okay, go ahead.
I just had a quick question of clarification. So the goal for the percentage of affordable units is how much?
100%.
Right, because
the rents on affordable units would average 60%. So that usually means that we put 20% at 80% and 20% at 40% and 60% at 60%.
Of AMI.
Of AMI, which is a standard which is used across the city.
So would any of them be the extremely low income, which is 0 to 30%?
Well, that's a negotiation we have with the city. We may put a slightly higher percentage at 80% and put 15% at 30%. But the average rent in the facility has to be at 60%.
I think my main concern is, like, for example, $2,000 is a lot of money anywhere, and it's especially a lot for Brownsville, which is extremely low income.
And there would be some
affordable housing itself. You'll have time to speak. So for the affordable housing itself, I have a beef with when affordable housing, when the rent is high, and so I think $2,000 for affordable housing in Brownsville is.
We're building a building now in Bushwick, where I can't believe it, but we're renting 450 square foot studios for $3,300 a month. So the rents in New York City are going up, and the good thing about this facility is the rents will be limited by the AMI, and we will have some rents who will be at the very low level. That's something the city HPD requires as part of their negotiation with us, and so we'll have some rents at 30% of median income,
and some at 80%.
I'm still concerned about it, to be honest. And then my other question was, well, it's more of a comment. I think, like the original plan was to have not income restricted. I think was the original 30%. Yeah. Okay, I'll leave it there. I'm happy that there is a new stated goal of having 100%, but I think a lot of times when we have these projects and the final project doesn't actually look like the proposed project, so but my hope is that there are affordable units and that they're deeply affordable rather than $2,000.
Well, the two-bedroom unit is affordable at $1,400 a month. So it's a little less, but, granted, the real problem in New York is we have a tremendous demand for really low income. If you're an immigrant coming from Honduras and you're working here, or if you're a person working as a porter in a building or something, you cannot even afford the low income units in New York City. And that's a problem. That's a problem that we have. We need in the city of New York 250,000 affordable units. We're building 2,000 a year. So that's why in Housing Authority, if you have a 3-bedroom apartment and you're living in Florida, you can rent it to 3 different families for $1,000 a month and give them a bedroom. But we have a housing crisis here, and we just do not have the financing to provide the number of affordable units that we need in the city of New York. We need 250,000 a minimum at this point.
And I think my main concern is we could have 100% affordable. We can have a development with 100% affordable housing, but if the if the actual affordable housing is high rent,
affordable.
If the actual affordable housing is high rent, then it can actually lead to gentrification in that area because it leads to a lot of things being increased.
Most of the people in this area who we're targeting are people who have 2 working people in the family, and they qualify for this level of affordability. So that if you have 2 people working in your family, you're making $70,000-$80,000 a year, and that's who the affordable housing is targeted for in New York. 15% you can put aside for people, 30%. But when we're talking about being affordable here, we're talking about being affordable for people who are making $70,000 or $80,000 a year.
Yeah, but that's moderate income. That's not.
This
is my point.
But not to quarrel, because I got.
No, I'm just trying to get
the definitions. The income definitions are extremely low income, which is the bottom, is up to 30% of the AMI. Very low income is 31 to 50% of AMI, and low income is 51 to 80% of AMI. So there are different categories when we use these words. There are different income bands that are in them. We're aiming for it to be 100% low income through a combination of very low income and low income, and manipulating those numbers with HPD to come out.
But HPD, the term low-income housing no longer really refers to low-income people. It refers to moderate-income people, because the moderate-income people can't afford any other kind of housing except tax credit supplied for housing. And the city forces us to provide some units at 30% of median income, but that's a minority of the units that they put in any of their projects.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you all. No other questions for you all, and no other members of the public wishing to testify on this item, so we will officially close the hearing on Belmont Osborne calendars 18 and 19. And thank you all again for being with us. Madam Secretary, is there any other business before the Commission today?
No, Chair Grodnick, there is no other business before the Commission, but I do have some public information to share. For those of you who are unable to or did not wish to testify, you can submit written testimony online by selecting this hearing on the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal, through DCP's website, or by mailing your comments to City Planning Commission, Calendar Information Office, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, 10271.
Terrific. And before we close, I did want to just extend my appreciation certainly to the commissioners, but a special thank you and congratulations to the staff of the Department of City Planning Staten Island office for their work on the South Richmond zoning relief proposal, which passed unanimously by this commission today. So thanks to them and to the entire team at City Planning. With that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
The time is 12:19.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon, everyone.